if you're a black person in the UK and you want to work for something, you add value, you bring what you want to bring, you can get through, you can get by. And that is evident in immigrant groups like the Nigerian group. Like if you go to any hospital, like my GP, my general practitioner doctor in the UK is Nigerian. They're all through those sectors. There is property development from Nigeria. Nigerians own lots of real estate, like the rich Nigerians own lots of real estate in London. So I think if you come with enough value and something that favors them and you, that's what business is. It's an exchange of value.
Hi guys, welcome to Kenganda. My name is Janita Maya and this is the Repat podcast. And on today's episode, I have TJ, a mixed British Nigerian who has been in Uganda for a year and a half. Welcome, TJ.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I'm also joined by Mr. O'Shea Duke Jackson, coming in all the way from where? O'Shea, tell the people.
Del Paso Heights, California, baby. 3800 block.
Okay.
You know what time it is.
Okay, welcome to the podcast. O'Shea, take this one.
Some of you guys may not know. I don't know if we can reveal this, right? But we have a particular group that we have. It's not open to the public, so you can't join it.
Yeah.
So, but it's a group, and TJ's in the group. We meet monthly, and we have some discussions sometimes a little offline about different things that we may not talk about it. We're going to talk about it today. And you guys know I'm like way to the right conservative with a lot of my pro-Black or Pan-African ideologies, right? Like really, 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 would you say I'm really extreme to the right?
You're more right than me.
Yeah, more right. So, and TJ, who comes from Britain, right? Which is a different experience than America, and also he's a white mother, Nigerian father. We're on the same path, but with different approaches. And so the idea that we want to talk about today is, can other groups who are non-African, non-Black assist in the development of Pan-Africanism, or should those people be excluded from the group completely, not being invited and things like that? And so TJ feels differently than me, right? So
I didn't know it was about Pan-Africanism. Let's just say the development of Africa.
Okay.
So if it's about Pan-Africanism, I'm not sure I can
speak on that.
I'm not sure I'm great at understanding exactly the definitions of Pan-Africanism and all that. But if we're just talking about development of the continent, then my view is there are native African elements that are actively destructive for the continent.
Okay.
First of all, we should start there if we want to improve the continent.
Right.
Should take responsibility for the things we can control, we can change, we can improve.
Right.
There's always going to be these outside elements that want to come and take what's yours, take advantage, and Africa's had plenty of that over its history. So with that being said, if we can get ourselves right, if we can be efficient, we can be on point, we're not cheating people, we've got a vision, we're professional, we're on time, we do things right. We have contract law. We have property
the law actually works.
Everything works.
Those institutions, right?
Then it shouldn't matter if whoever comes to do business with us.
Right.
Because we just set the terms and we determine if those terms are good for Africa or not. The problem we have at the moment is that the people that come and interact with Africa may or may not have our best interests at heart.
Right.
Yeah.
And they know that if they can just get in with this person or that person, they can just come and do whatever they want. And it doesn't have to be in the interest of Africa. It just has to be in the interest of that person. So before I start blaming them, I think it starts with having the proper attitude, the proper defense, the proper stance and self-respect of Africans on the continent. And then if someone has a great idea and great value that benefits us or mutually benefits us, why not? It doesn't matter where they're from. As long as it's good for all of us and everyone wins, let's go for it. That's the way I see it.
Okay, so let me just talk about that in terms of a country like Singapore. I don't know if the guy's name was Jack Long Koo or something like that.
Yes, I'm familiar with the guy. Amazing leader.
Great leader. So Singapore was kicked out of Malaysia in the early 60s. Yeah. He even cried on television.
Ex-British colony, by the way.
Ex-British colony.
Yeah.
And they had no real natural resources. Yeah. And so, but the resource they had was the investment in the people. So what he put together was, okay, listen, you international companies that would like to use Singapore, which is like a hub for, the Asian tiger countries. I don't know which ones those are, but I think it's like Malaysia. What are the Asian tigers?
Indonesia?
Singapore is one of them. Whatever.
Yeah, in that region.
Yeah, that region. So Singapore became like a hub for trade, processing oil.
Yes.
And he made people say, hey, listen, Taiwan, I believe, is one of them too. Asian tigers.
Guan Yu.
There you go. Guan. Brilliant guy. And his people benefited from the skilled labor. So did Taiwan, something very similar. So those are countries in which I can see that this has happened. Now, let me get on my conspiracy theory. I'm going to say something that I can't prove, but I want to just say it. I don't know if, and I can't say that we haven't had African leaders who were like this guy, because I'm pretty sure that we have. But would the whites ever take such a suggestion? Has that been put on the table? Even when I see these countries that have these sovereign wealth funds, for example, you see Saudi Arabia has one, Norway has one, well over $1 trillion. Do you think that what I'm trying to say is, would that same level of parity be given to Congo? Would we expect to see that same level of parity to be given to Nigeria? When you see countries in Africa developing, no shot at Rwanda, but would Rwanda be developing at its rate if it was the Congo? I don't think so. I believe because Rwanda doesn't have the resources and it's not as much of a threat as the Congo or Nigeria, so it's still stable. Now, I can't prove what I'm saying, so right. I'll say this, but I've noticed that the more resource-rich places are not able to develop. And so what I'm saying is, when we talk about these institutions and systems, when you look at the Singapores and Rwandas, they're not necessarily threats. And even if they do develop, Singapore is not going to challenge anybody for global supremacy at any level. But the Congo could, I think. Nigeria could, I think. Nigeria could run the world. I think that the one thing is when we have these other groups that are coming in, because we already know what happened with the Biafra War. These companies, Shell and other these people, while they brought Christianity to the South region and the Muslim was the North, who did they support? They supported these Northerners against the people that they trained how to do things. And it was only for them to keep power and things like that. So I'm not against the development of Africa for other groups, but then why do they want Africa to develop? Will it be at their downfall? That's the question. I think when Singapore, they don't really care as much. But I think with the Congo and Nigeria, you're not going to let Nigeria with 200 million people population, that kind of fertile land, develop like that. And that's my worry is that, okay, why do they want to let these people develop when we've already seen that they don't? And if it was that level of parity towards Singapore and what we've seen in Taiwan, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But Taiwan and Singapore don't have as much to offer as these other countries, and I just don't feel like they would allow them to do that. I can't prove that, but I believe that.
I think there's always the possibility that there is truth to that kind of conspiracy.
Yes.
And I see it as a level, like, I don't know where the line is of destabilization and things like that.
Right.
But ultimately, every country is looking to increase their position on the global stage.
Yes.
Okay, so everyone's jostling for position, and they make alliances with those that they feel they can benefit with or not benefit with. So with Singapore, they've made ironclad contract law. Finance, it attracts finance.
Yes.
And they totally eradicated political corruption.
Yes.
What they did was they paid everyone in position highly. And then if anyone stepped out of line, the level of law that will come down on that corrupt person was different.
It's death.
So it just totally disincentivized
Right.
corruption.
Yes.
And it worked. And now the global West have a gateway to to Asian financing through Singapore. And that means that they're so useful and so valuable that they attracted all of that business. Now, we mentioned Rwanda. Paul Kagame has openly said he's trying to model Rwanda after Singapore.
Yes.
And he should be able to do it because there's so many similarities. They're both small. There's resources all around.
They're both dictators. Yeah.
I'll leave that for other people to think about. Now, there's a book that I've read that is not the most enjoyable book, but I understood about it helped me understand just how complex some of these problems are. It's called The Mystery of Capital by something DeSoto, I can't remember his name, but The Mystery of Capital. And it explains how the inability to have ironclad property law
Yes.
means that so many other things in society can't develop. So the countries that are developed essentially have ironclad property laws.
Yes.
And the countries that can't develop don't. When you look around Africa, most countries have, and I'm going somewhere with this, please excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead. Do you think?
But most countries around Africa, they have minimum of 2 types of land property ownership. There'll be tribal, there'll be governmental, and then you could even say maybe those 2 can fall victim to the government just saying, we just own this bit of land now. They'll make up some pretense and say, this bit of land is now for us for doing this development. They can dress it any way they like.
Yes.
Essentially, it's a land grab.
Yes.
And I think many African countries could say they have experience with this kind of behavior. So what it means is that your local farmer, your local businessman, your local whoever can't go to the bank and get equity on loans off that property because the bank just sees it as like the government could take it away, or if your tribal leader has a dispute, that land could be taken away and becomes so that in the US or in the UK or Singapore, those types of laws are so ironclad that the bank will loan you the money,
right?
So that then you can buy a second farm, or you can make that farm have more output, be more efficient, and then your wealth grows without you having to spend a generation building without financing step by step.
Yes.
So the whole country can improve its wealth.
Yes.
So outside development doesn't want to come to Africa.
Right.
Proper banking, all of these things, it's so much harder for them to be attracted to Africa. Right? So then the only people that come are the sharks. They're like, right, who can we bribe? Who can we take advantage of? Who is uneducated? Who can we, whatever. And where is the resources? So you just constantly have this low-level wars going on in Congo all the time, tribal, this, that, and who's to say the outside forces aren't whispering in this tribe's ear against that tribe and causing destruction so that they can extract this thing? But it goes back to my original thing. If we had, and maybe this seems like a fairy tale, but imagine we had a united African army and political system, and we just surrounded Congo, and we said, the resources in this country are going to be managed like this, and no one from the outside can do business with us except through this one system, and it's going to be fair. We're going to dictate our prices, we're going to dictate our this, then businesses would know where they stand. As long as they have no fear of corruption, no fear of whatever, you would attract the world to come and trade in these places. And that's how Rwanda, I think, is winning right now, because they're creating a place that you might not be able to buy your gold from Congo, but you can get it out of Rwanda because things work in Rwanda.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
So I, again, see it starting with Africans. If we can have integrity all the way up, difficult ask, if we can have integrity all the way up, structures so that we take control of our stuff, play the long game, then it doesn't matter who wants to come and corrupt us. We're uncorruptible. That's the way I see it. Conspiracy stuff, you might start getting CIA agents. If we decided to build an army, maybe there's outside influence, and the whole Gaddafi conspiracy wanted to unite Africa. So maybe that is part of what you think can happen. But we haven't given ourselves a chance to say, guys, contract law is solid, property law is solid, no corruption in our governments, come and do business with us. We've never had that opportunity. So if we can make that opportunity, then let's assess what conspiracies they can throw at us. But if there's always someone ready to be corrupted, it's going to break down.
Yeah, funny thing, like for the past 2 days, I've been going down this rabbit hole. So I think recently in Congo, there's a boat that capsized.
Whoa.
Yeah, so there are like 200 and something people on that boat because like that road, that transportation is not so good. That road transport is not that good. So most of them opt for like water transport, and then it's so dangerous.
Yes,
no
they
one
hang
has
off
a
the back.
yeah, no one has a. You've seen the video. No
Yeah.
one has a life jacket. Nothing. It's just like riding on waves and vibes and getting from one city. or
Waves
one
and
town.
vibes, huh?
Yeah.
Sounds like
If you need
Literally.
the toilet, you have
Sounds
to
like
lean over the edge.
Yeah.
Sounds like a new event
Hold
here
the
in Kampala we
edge.
can do.
Yeah.
Waves and
Put your
vibes.
tushy the other side.
It's like a 3-day trip or something.
Yeah, 12-day too. Yeah, to like get from one side to the other. And that just got me thinking there's something called a resource curse, whereby a country that's very rich in minerals and whatnot doesn't benefit the most from those minerals, And when you could see the video, you could see that like the Congolese, like the people are also illegally mining their own minerals because apparently they don't have licenses or anything like that. But then they were saying the Chinese were posing a great threat to them because they come in with the machines and whatnot.
Yeah.
And they pay some armed forces to guard them. So they pay like fellow Congolese to like fight the other Congolese to like leave a certain territory so that the Chinese machine can like get all the gold they want from it. I think going back to O'Shea's question, when you look at it from the outside, just like TJ said, I think if the system was proper and if the system was as straightforward as Rwanda's, we can give that as an example, I think it would work if we brought in maybe outside parties to our benefit. But the way I say it most times is like when someone from the outside comes in, there's always someone who's one of us willing to sell us. There's always someone.
Sell us out.
Yeah, sell us out. There's always someone
No
on
Diddy,
the
no
team.
Diddy. Gotta say no Diddy now because you wanted to say sell and
Stop.
it might have been one of those baby
Yeah.
oil parties.
There's always someone on the team willing to sell out their people just
Yes.
to like get a small cut for them, which doesn't benefit everyone else in the end.
Yeah.
Because they're thinking of themselves, and the corruption runs deep.
To every
The
level.
corruption runs deep, you guys. Like you can say, oh yeah, I'm not corrupt. But when you think about it, people even are corrupt in like schools. You go to school and then you have like a favorite teacher. So you kind of bribe them so they can like take care of your student really well, or bribe the head teacher or something like that. So it's small things like that even if people don't care for them, they're happening and, people are seeing them. So
They're desperate people.
I think as Africans, we should exclude ourselves and keep to ourselves what we can, only if we have the proper the system in place and the laws and guidelines. Because I'm telling you, as Africans or Black people, we can't go to Asia or anything like that and just be funny and try to like join in on that team.
Never.
They would never let you
Never.
in. I'm sure the laws are very strict on something like that. So I don't understand why as Africans we're so open to like let.
What do you mean join in?
I don't know, like maybe like foreigners, like okay, now Black people as foreigners, you're coming in to like do something with them,
Yeah.
join on
Business.
You
the
don't
business.
like they have more opportunities here than they would
Yeah.
have somewhere else.
I don't think they would welcome you with open arms if you said, "Hey, I'm a Black investor and this is what I want. Me and my people want to come to your country and do this." Do you think they would be so?
Unless you're
happy to
LeBron
receive you?
James or Kevin Durant.
I do think that if you come with value,
As a Black person?
yeah, and something to exchange, like my experiences in the UK, I'm sure that there's all sorts of issues in Asia and other places. If you look for all the disadvantages, you will find them. But if you're a Black person in the UK and you want to work for something, you add value, you bring what you want to bring, you can get through, you can get by. And that is evident in immigrant groups like the Nigerian group. Like if you go to any hospital, like my GP my general practitioner doctor in the UK is Nigerian. They're all through those sectors. There is property development from Nigeria. Nigerians own lots of real estate, like the rich Nigerians own lots of real estate in London. So I think if you come with enough value and something that favors them and you, that's what business is. It's an exchange of value. If you come in and you're like, I want to make this now like Africa. We're going to do our cooking the way we do on the side of the road. We're going to do all this stuff. Then, of course, they're going to say, take your culture and go. But if you come and you're like, you guys are low on this resource, we want to make this investment in your country, we'll give you this resource, and in return, we want X, Y, and Z. If you can come with a deal, it's about finding what they need and their value and finding that exchange. And I don't think that at that point they care about the color of your skin so much. You call me naive if you like. 98% of the cobalt, or 90% plus, is only in Congo. It's the only place you can get it.
That's so rich.
Right. So that means every country has to do business with Congo somewhere. But somehow we find ourselves in a situation where it's a big mess and it's child labor and it's all this.
It's a lot.
So I think if we had a good system and you went to Asia, you were like, right, we have the monopoly on cobalt. This is what we want from your country. This is the type of, we want investment opportunities, we want this and this. That's how these trade agreements happen at the governmental level. They say, we'll reduce the taxes here for you on this. You can bring your wine from France, your champagne, and in return we did. Like, this is how these negotiations happen. I think if you look for not being accepted because you're African or not your skin color, you'll find it. You'll find it.
I do have a question for you though. Before we get to that, fun fact: in Western Uganda, a small town, there was a cobalt mining company. Cobalt was quite big by then, but now it's like dried out. But it was a huge deal.
Cobalt in Uganda, right?
Walked on the train from that area to like Kampala so they can transport cobalt and whatnot. So yeah, it was a big company. I remember it because like as a child, it was like everyone had a job at the mining company.
There's probably more cobalt in Uganda. More
uranium. I feel like
there's lots of stuff.
I feel like we're not exploring minerals that much.
Let me say this. I mean to cut anybody off, but we got to also look at, when we talk about exchanging value. Now, you made a good point that needs to be specified, that they can come here and do whatever you do, and they are more widely accepted than you would be if you're there. That is absolutely true. Okay? Now, sometimes we say, well, race is not always a factor. But I'd argue that it is. I mean, to a certain degree. I live in the United States. I lived in Europe. I can tell you, I mean, with my income, I can do very well in the United States. But we already know what the game is over there for blacks. I mean, obviously, blacks are doing well. But still, even the rich Nigerians, they may have property, but they're never going to run the UK. They're not going to have the real wealth. They're never going to do that. And those people don't want them. And behind closed doors, I'm pretty sure there's evidence of them being talked about. Let me just finish. And the things that also is when you go to Dubai, how many stories have we heard in India? And it's not always poor Africans that have these experiences, but you never will see a German person come to Africa and talk about, oh, they discriminated against me. The reality is this. When Congo first started off as an independent colony from France, they had a whopping 15 college graduates. Uganda had less than 20 college graduates in 1962. Okay? Nigeria had they had a little bit more though. Nigeria had more. But the
larger population,
and they have more institutions. But a lot of these countries were started to fail from the beginning. Okay, even Rwanda, their genocide, they rebounded. But the same Burundian wars and Rwandese wars was because of favoritism from the Belgium, showing favoritism between one tribe to another. So the question is this: okay, when you're learning from what others are doing, to what level? Because I've been to Dubai. And the Arabs have learned to a certain degree, but they're still them. Now, the problem with the blacks is when we learn from others and their institutions, now all of a sudden we become Negropeans, and that's the effect it has on our mind. But those groups who have become Singaporean, or you have a lot of people in Singaporean Chinese, you have many different outlets there. And of course, they use English, and people adopted the language, and that's good, and they have contract law based on British law. That's the thing. But the blacks give up so much more trying to adopt these things, which has been a problem. And so the reality is that, okay, can you still work with other groups without them being over you? And I haven't seen that. When you see how whites are appreciated in Africa or Asians are appreciated in Africa, Africa is working with a very low self-esteem, which may not be what Singaporeans are working with or what Arabs are working with, okay? But I see it every day. So when we're talking about the psychological, we're talking about the contract law, that's fine. But what about the psychological law, a psychological mindset of blacks automatically feeling like their low self-esteem is this and all of that, and there's not going to be any parity from the blacks towards the whites. And what I'm saying is he's right with all those things we just say for ourselves.
Yeah.
But the reality is that at a certain level, whites can't help us.
Yeah.
We have to understand that we have to figure this out ourselves. Otherwise, if they would have helped us, they would have helped you when they colonized you. They taught you everything. Why haven't they helped you now? Whatever we are as blacks, I speak English. I don't speak any African language. They are our children. So how did the blacks end up to where they are? Because they helped us get here. They knew what they were doing. And they're not going to help you get any further than that, because you would have already saw it. Every country in Africa, for the most part, your poorest countries in the world are from here. Most of them. Yeah. A lot of it is our doing. A lot of it is their doing too. What you say? Future performance is indicative of what? Past performance. These white people are not going to help you.
The saying is, past performance is not always a predictor of future performance.
Well, I will argue that.
But okay,
I have a question.
Yes, go
on.
And that's also
it
true.
It kind of supplements what O'Shea is saying.
Yeah.
But when you said, your GP is a Nigerian guy, and you see all these Nigerians doing amazing things, shout out to them. I know of someone who was abroad, and he said there's like an invisible ceiling. Mm-hmm. It's like, fine, they'll give you this position of a GP, but it's like you can't go higher than that or something like that. Or can you head a hospital if you're black?
I mean, we've had Nigerian politicians this last group that just left at the highest level, not prime minister, but we had an Asian as a prime minister, and there's Nigerians in the top level of politics. It's a tough thing. There might be a ceiling, but I would live as if there is no ceiling in my life.
Okay.
Right?
Let me say this real quick. I just want to. We had Barack Obama as the president of the United States. Ask me, have blacks become better or worse since 2008?
Have they?
Blacks are doing worse.
Okay, so the point you made about they're over us when we go there, and the position that Africans are coming from, it's a mental thing that exists, and we might not agree on exactly all of the points, but I understand that there can be these different levels, and blacks are generally at the bottom, and in many circumstances they're at the bottom. Fine. I don't know if you've ever talked about had a discussion in business where people say, "Don't negotiate out of desperation."
Yes.
Right. So we are desperate.
Yes.
We're trying to get our foot in. We don't necessarily have the education and the finesse and all of this, and we're acting like that. We're coming in and we're not poised. We're not thinking out of abundance. We're thinking out of scarcity. So that is some type of like mental stuff that I think we have to work on, take many decades for us to work on that at the lowest level. And it also comes out of the fact that there's still many people living at a poverty or low level all throughout the continent, and they haven't been self-actualized, right? So we need to get that self-actualization, the belief, the understanding, that we're worth something, that we've got things and the more we look and point and say it's their fault, we don't spend any time on becoming self-actualized ourselves. So if there is a ceiling, for me, there's no ceiling.
Right.
The way I think.
Yes.
There's no ceiling. If there's a ceiling, then I will work to break through it. But I'm not working on a presumption of a ceiling, because if you say my goal is to earn $1,000, that's a self-imposed ceiling, because maybe you could have made 10,000 if that was your goal to start with. So I see a place like Congo as like a very beautiful woman,
Okay.
right? So the analogy is this. This girl, she grows up, she's a child, she gets to somewhere where puberty starts.
Mm-hmm.
And she starts noticing glances from men. People start opening doors for her and she didn't do anything to deserve this open door. And guys are fighting over her at school to date her. And she realizes at some point in her teens, she's got this power in the room over men. Men fumble over her. She's gorgeous. She's a showstopper. And what you find is quite often women like that, not often, some women like that, they play and trade on that. And they don't develop character skills, communication skills, comedy, whatever, because everyone's just ready to give them attention without any development.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they get to this place and you find them in their 20s and they're sleeping around. They're in some casting couch situation and they're this and that. By the time they're 30, they're over it. Their life is a train wreck. And they started off as this like show-stopping beauty, but inside they're broken. The wealth of Congo is like that for the continent of Congo. They're just so rich in natural resources. It's always been mismanaged. And then it's developed into this mess. And to undo that work it's like unpicking the biggest knot in history. It is so difficult, so many factors, it's highly complex. But we have to chip away at that. And I think the best way we know there's people coming as predators, but I think if we want to pull the greatest lever to make that better, like if we could only do one thing to improve that, I think it's self-reflection, self-responsibility, rather than being like, we're always going to be under these guys. They come to corrupt us. They come to do that. They come to do that. We're not working on ourselves. And when you fight your enemy, if they are your enemy, you don't get to dictate when they attack, how they attack, when they want to stop, when they want to, whatever. So, I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. My goal is to make my defense impregnable. I can't complain that this guy's got a better choke than me, a better this and that than me. I can't control what his intentions are towards me, but I can control my level of training, my development, what I can take responsibility for, my mistakes, correct them and improve. So I think Africans, whether it's in the private sector or the government sector, should be working to strive to work on this mentality stuff, to work on this thing that we're not lesser than. And that can be done through reward, through gain. We should be looking to technology to help, like I was saying in other conversations, to leapfrog us. We're at the precipice of technologies that can literally change, in regards to AI. We can have a healthcare system for 1% of the cost that it would be in the past if we leverage that technology. Africa can afford 1%, right? So we can leverage these things, gain the confidence, gain the belief, gain the defense, gain this stuff, and set that position of defense to protect ourselves. And then we can start to see, okay, when they come to us, how do they deal with us? How can we deal with them? And start that negotiation. And they may come with a corrupt mindset and a corrupt way and corrupt whatnot. But, blaming them all the time, some of it might be true, but it doesn't progress us because it doesn't help us change. Anyway, that's my opinion.
And let me just say this. I agree with everything you said. But I think that when we were having that conversation, you were not really responding that, but I could tell, like, you were just like, I don't really believe,
Well, that conversation wasn't exactly this
one, yeah, but it's gonna relate.
Yeah.
Everybody who knows me, I'm an extreme hardcore pro-black. Yeah. I don't want any outside help from anyone. And the reason why that you can't, and I'm gonna say that for some people who want to have a mixed bag. When you're talking about you want to have the knowledge of self and you want to help and love your people, you're not going to be able to achieve that worshiping other groups. And that, right. and so what happens is, when you see the white guy coming in Entebbe Airport with the flip-flops, those people have to be taught that, hey, your people, it's your people that are preferred because of what you've been taught already. And you can only do that by working with your people and achieving confidence in your group.
I misunderstood that part. Your people have been taught? Who's the people?
I mean, the blacks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the black people have been taught.
Well, the blacks have been taught, at least when I encounter many people in Africa, I won't just say Ugandans, but the self-esteem is so low of so many people.
Yes.
They believe that the way that they are is wrong. It's not everyone is like this, but
they deify
other people.
Yeah, the European, the American.
Yeah, even the black American. You go to Nairobi.
Right.
I've never seen any place in Africa that gives African Americans as much love as Nairobi. Just see us on the matatu. It's all of us. It's Ice. Ice Cube hasn't been popular in America for years. Ice Cube was on the matatu. Chris Tucker's on the matatu. Michael Jordan. Like anybody that has a really adopted African American culture has been Nairobi, Kenya. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about there are people that will come to Africa and Meg Thee Stallion, or we just saw Lauryn Hill.
Yeah.
She was in Nairobi. They will come to Kampala. Because Kampala doesn't have a real big appreciation of African Americans like Nairobi does. But Nairobi is huge on that. And which is, like I said, they're also huge on their people too. But you need to appreciate oneself. And the issue is when you have other groups that are helping you, other groups typically don't help you. And I know you're not saying that for this conversation. Yeah. Without being worshipped themselves as being the person that brought you. What did the guy King Baudouin said in Belgium? He brought them civilization in the Congo. And so I see when I see other groups like, those are whites or Americans are coming here like, oh yeah, but this person, this is boss, he's doing all these great things for us. And instead of somebody saying, well, why you can do the same thing that this guy is doing for your own group, and which is a different conversation. And in order for you to achieve what you're talking about, you have to be very extreme like me. There's no way to get around that. And I think that's the issue. And some of us we want to be able to have what you're talking about with having a more of a liberal mind. And you just can't do that. I don't think China has a very liberal mind. I don't think that the Singaporeans they may have a very liberal mind when it comes to transactions and business, but the way they feel about themselves after Malaysia kicked them out, they had to look at themselves as we are a unique, distinct group away from others. And we are just as good as everybody else. The Arabs, just like 75 years ago, they were living like Jesus Christ. Now, do you think that they have a worship of other groups? They can't have that mentality and be where they are today. It's not possible. They have to feel like the Chinese, and the Chinese have to feel like the Singaporeans. But the Africans want to be able to say, we got to be able to do this. And then we need to be able to be, a part of this cosmopolitan world, which in most of those countries that do very well are tied to some level of religion like Islam or something like that. But that's what I'm saying. If you're going to do that, you have to be like really, really, really hardcore, like the Indians, when they come to Africa, are they interracial dating? Are they mixing with other groups? Never. But as blacks, we're more open to that. Like we're African Americans, we don't really hate on people for having different races and all. That's not what we do. But the other groups that have more advantages to us, they think like that. So we would have to be more like them, which means excluding a lot of people out. And a lot of Africans don't want to do that. A lot of blacks don't want to do that.
I think that austerity is delivered when it's appropriate. Mm-hmm. And it's not all the time that austerity is necessary. Mm-hmm. So you let's just talk about it in terms of conservatism and liberalism. Mm-hmm. Would you call it liberalism, the other side?
Yes.
Okay. So,
I mean, to make it plain.
Yeah, like we're simplifying things here.
Yes.
But you're saying you need to be ultra conservative, let's say.
I would say so.
Right. So
more or less, more to the right than to the center.
What I would say is that conservative, it's more like it's delivered where it's necessary, but you can't close the door on the liberal side because there's a time and a place to deliver that also.
Yeah, I agree.
So there should be this kind of like balance, and you can argue about when and where that should be deployed. But I think it's like there's a time when war, like they're coming here to kill us. We must defend ourselves and pick up arms. That you might say that's a justifiable time for violence. But then it's like they're over there minding their business. We want what they've got.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the same justifiable time to pick up arms? I would say not. Right? That's the time to trade. That's the time to find common ground.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you want to deploy your tightness, your firm stance at certain junctures and not at others.
I mean, in terms of cultural identification, very conservative. I'm not talking about that when it comes to the possibility of trade or the possibility of things like that. Of course, that's different.
When you talk about the Kenyans really enjoying African Americans versus the Ugandans, there's so many factors that have gone into that. The wholesale exporting of media that the Americans have done, they're in everybody's TV all over the world.
It's crazy.
You know, they've exported their culture. And then it might be that the Kenyans, the way they are, the way they think, much more prone to receiving that exportation versus a Ugandan. And that's where some of the difference comes. So there's all these complex intertwining things. And, you know, it's hard to put your finger on exactly, you know, why this is that and why that is this. Fundamentally, I have a disagreement with being non-flexible in your stance. We should try and be flexible. Sometimes you're going to get it right. Sometimes you're going to get it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Learn from others. But be ready to be flexible, you know, be softer on X, Y, and Z because you need relationships. You need back and forth. You need trade.
Sure.
All of those things.
Yes. No, I don't disagree. See, I didn't. You thought I was going to blindside him today on the podcast.
I thought we were going to go a bit deeper.
No, you did blindside him. But I feel like you guys all gave great points and it's the perfect way to end this episode.
Yeah.
Unless you'd...
I don't know. I have one last thing to say.
Please.
Me as a very extreme, like proud African-American and then being a part of this larger Pan-African community. First of all, coming to Africa and just seeing like how a lot of us in the African-American community were raised. Of course, we can say that we have people that are Americans that have low self-esteem. But on average, you know, my parents and other people's parents is, you know, y'all want to be a doctor or I want to be a lawyer. Even if you don't believe that, you know, there's so many people that can tell you, you can do it. Yeah. And then here's somebody from the Black community. Here is Dr. Charles Drew. Here is Medgar Evers. Here are these people that went to the HBCUs and achieved this, and it came back to the community and did this. You can do anything that the whites can do. And we used to have a saying that if you want to compete with a white person, America need to be 33 times better, 5 times better, 10 times better, right? When I come here, and one of the struggles I've had in Kinganda was, you know, our last producer for the Pan African Dating Show, you're like, hey, you can do the job. I can't do it. Look, why can't you do it? They're just not going to. Like, every reason that they could not do something. And when you have that self-defeated mentality, it's like, well, who taught you that? And I don't think that it was the Buganda Kingdom that taught them that. I don't think that was who, because before, I don't think that was the Kabaka Mwanga who said that his people couldn't do those things. I think that someone else told them that. And I'm not blaming anybody for being dominated, but that doesn't come from Africa. Normally, I believe that comes from somewhere else, and that has been adopted.
Okay, so what should be done about that?
Well, what should be done about that? I don't know if you want to hear it in this video.
Okay,
because it might.
My point is, we can say it's these guys' fault.
No, I'm expressing what could be done about that.
Okay.
And what I feel is very similar to what some of your white groups in America feel. You know, I mean, let me just say this about some of the guys who are white racists.
Okay.
A lot of them feel very similar to, and I'm not a racist per se at all, but they feel very similar to extreme pro-blacks. So when they want separate from, it's so many blacks who feel the same way. And the reason why I say that is because at least let us be out there to develop by ourselves as much as we can. I have a t-shirt that I bought. I showed you a hat, Mound Bayou. The first African-American city started in the 1870s in Mississippi. And what did they want? They started that city to be separate from the whites in Mississippi. And so that is the first key for me, is separation as much as possible. Not because you're racist, but for your own protection. And a lot of pro-blacks and a lot of people who have, you know, they're pro-black and they have certain white friends. I get it. But when we talk about this extreme side of things, and I don't really want to get into it because I might get the YouTube channel taken down. They don't want to talk about how I really can feel about certain things like this. And that's where it starts. It's separation.
Well, I disagree.
Yeah, exactly. You asked me what mine was.
Yeah.
No, I disagree with separation.
To a certain degree.
Well, separation never ends. It's a bottomless pit. Like, okay, Africans can be separate, but now there's African Americans versus Africans. Then you come into Africa and there's Yorubas versus Igbos, and then there's this tribe versus that. The separation thing means that we're going to create groups, and those groups, the worst case scenario for group identity stuff is that this group blames everything on that group, and then, just look at the last century's issues. It's all based around groups, and the stuff is going on now. So a lot of it's based around groups. Yeah. So I think it's about respect, mutual understanding, and there's things that should be preserved, cultural elements, ancestral elements, things like that. It's like, this is African, we should protect this.
Yeah.
Right? But then there's also like, these guys have made leaps and bounds over here. A small example, in Japan, the emphasis on eating real food is way higher than, let's say, America, where you've actually got fast food restaurants in schools where they're just eating sugar and...
Especially in colleges.
Right. So like, it's like, why can't we keep our culture, but notice that this is better for society because it's working over here, and then we take that or collaborate on that. We work together on that. Mm-hmm. So if we have separation, it's now we're only looking at the negative things they do. We can't collaborate with them, and therefore no ideas are transferred. No negative is transferred, but nothing positive is also transferred. So we end up throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Well, let me not say this, because I think I know Jen is tired. No. Who's the most successful group in Uganda?
I don't know.
Indians.
Do they separate?
No.
How separate are they from Ugandans to a certain degree? There is a degree of separation, right?
Probably.
Will they marry you?
No.
They won't. Like 100% they won't marry you.
Yes, 100%.
What would happen if they marry you? What would happen to that person?
I think
that person's out, right?
Yeah, the fellow Indians are like.
So can you go? How far can you go in their business as a Ugandan and Indian?
Not far, 1%.
Not far.
Yeah.
So do you think that's right or wrong?
No, I think that's protection. Whether it's right or wrong is different.
Okay.
So, we're not talking about what's right or wrong. So what I'm saying is we've seen it here, and in wherever Indians are, they separate, and wherever they go, even America, they're on top. In England, they do well. So they're not trying to be inclusive. Why are the blacks trying to be? It doesn't work. If it would have worked, we wouldn't be like them.
That mentality that you're having, I mean, I understand it, but it's like, okay, I'm gonna have a gun. Mm-hmm. Oh, if you're getting a gun, I'm getting a gun, and now everyone in the room has to have a gun, and now we're saying it's all for protection, and then we just keep escalating up. Now I'm fully bodied armor and I can't whatever. Like, we can escalate that way, and it can just keep going, and we just have further separation, and that separation leads to conflict and war. I'm saying that, okay, we've seen that play out. We've seen what happens when we do that separation. The world doesn't respect that separation. Nature doesn't respect that separation, because it now means that like everyone has their little bit, and they like our resources and this, and we like, that's not how America throws away more food than Africa needs. It's because everyone's carving off this like ownership, this. There's things that we should take ownership of, culturally, historically, things like that.
And when you say culturally, that is what Indians are doing. Culturally, they're doing that.
But
they're still doing business and everything else.
Okay, like my dad went back to Nigeria with some old clothes that were in his young days the peak of Yoruba fashion. And when he put it on, his friend was like, "You can't wear that now. It's outdated." Even within culture, things shift and change and evolve. So when I say we need to keep hold of cultural things, it's respect of where we came from.
Yes.
Is the fundamental. But we're carving a new culture every day we step our path forward. Even if we just talk about Ugandans only. The things that were acceptable for Ugandans 100 years ago are not acceptable now in one scenario and the other. We're going to evolve. It is inevitable that we're going to mix. It is inevitable. The inception of humanity, this is the point I made for you before. Homo sapien, the homo human that we are, is a mix of 19 plus other subhuman species.
Mm-hmm.
Our inception is one of mixing and collaboration
Mm-hmm.
and war. This thing of like, I'm going to be more defensive. Okay, fine. That's how a lot of people think. But we've seen where the conclusion leads to. And I don't think it's a positive place. So like I said, deploy defensiveness when you need to, but leave the door open for that integration. Because in 50 years, the Indians might not function like that anymore. They might decide like we need to integrate here.
Yeah. Thank you so much,
I doubt
TJ, for that.
Yeah.
Guys, if you want a continuation of this conversation, comment number 2 in the comment section.
Oh, let me say this.
We'll see it.
I'm not racist, but I am a person that wants to be working with my own group for my own protection because of what has happened with Europeans and colonization. So that's what I'm trying to put out there.
Yeah.
But very.
And thank you so much. This was such a beautiful conversation. We everyone.
Are you tired?
No, we're listening in and we're learning, and we like that. Guys, thank you so much for watching.
You ready to go home, huh?
Episode to the end. Comment 2 for a continuation of this conversation, this particular topic, and we'll get it going for you guys. You can follow TJ at Subishop on YouTube. You can find him there, and you can follow Shay here on Kenganda and on Kenganda Nation on all social media platforms. You can follow me at Johnny Tamaya. We'll see you guys next time.